All right, I'd like to welcome everyone to the City of Gardner Planning Commission meeting for Tuesday, March 24th, 2020. We have some different setup tonight. We have social spacing for the commissioners. There will be 3 commissioners that are off screen if you're watching from home. And those visiting us tonight are in a separate room watching via video. If you are visiting tonight, if you'd make sure that you sign in on the sign-in sheet that's located somewhere out in that room. I now call the meeting to order. Everyone would stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we'll do Commissioner roll call, starting with Commissioner Ford.
Commissioner Ford here.
Commissioner Deaton here.
Commissioner McNear here.
Commissioner Mader here.
Bowden here.
Commissioner Hanson present.
Simmons Lee here.
Okay, we have a quorum of 7 tonight. Next to the consent agenda, all matters listed within the consent agenda have been distributed to each member of the Planning Commission for study. These items are considered to be routine and will be enacted upon by one motion with no separate discussion. If separate discussion is desired on an item from either the Planning Commission or from the floor, that item may be removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda. We only have one item on the consent agenda. It's the minutes as written for the meeting on February 25th, 2020. Is there any commissioner who would like to make any alteration or change to the meeting minutes? No, then I would take a motion to accept the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Commissioner McNear and a second by Commissioner Ford. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor state aye.
Aye.
Any against? Any abstentions? Motion passes 7-0. We'll start with the regular agenda, Breckenwood Creek. Kelly from out of the hallway.
Good evening, Commissioners. Kelly Drake Woodward, Chief Planner here this evening. I'm grateful for you all being here in these strange times. Have to look all around now. I'll be presenting 2 applications that go with this case. The first is the rezoning. The second is the preliminary plat. So I'll do my presentation, end with the staff recommendation to have that public hearing on the rezoning discussion as usual. And then I do have a couple other slides for the preliminary plat to return to after that. Okay, so this is a rezoning application to rezone from the R1 single family residential district to the R2 two-family residential district. It is accompanied by a preliminary plat that is intended for detached house neighborhood building type. So in other words, for single family homes on smaller lots, generally 50 foot wide, 6,000 square feet in area. So here is your general area map. The property includes 38.6 acres of land. It's located approximately a little less than a half mile north of 175th Street on Kill Creek Road, north of the municipal airport and adjacent to the St. John Highlands 2 subdivision. There are 4 streets that terminate at the property boundary. In the blue stars, you'll see the collector streets, which are West Madison Street and Kill Creek Road. The local streets are in the red stars. West 172nd Street terminates in the middle portion at the southern boundary, and 173rd Street terminates in the lower eastern boundary. The site was annexed on September 5th, 2000. It has been rezoned several times, but has remained undeveloped. It was first rezoned from agriculture to a planned district as part of a larger development, which was to include 141 acres of single-family residential detached homes, row houses, multifamily, adjacent to non-residential. It was rezoned in 2004 to the R1 single-family residential as part of an envisioned development that would also include office building, planned garden apartment, and planned two-family residential districts. And the approved preliminary plat from previously showed a similar street layout to the current proposed preliminary plat. North of the subject property, there is a parcel that remains in county rural agriculture zoning and a vacant agricultural property zoned R1. R1 zoning abuts the east, west, and a portion of the south boundaries. The larger parcel to the south, which is located east of Kill Creek Road, has a pending request to rezone to RP3 from RP2, and adjacent to that is a parcel that is zoned RP2. A parcel zoned for RP3 abuts the southern portion of St. John Highlands subdivision, and you'll see up on the north on the left-hand side of your screen where it says rezone to R1 in February, that is the Hilltop Ridge subdivision that you saw not too long ago. So it just kind of barely touches this property at the diagonal. So this area has long been envisioned for a mix of residential housing densities and non-residential uses. Current land uses directly to the north is undeveloped ag. Preliminary plat was approved for Hilltop Ridge, where you see that white arrow on the left-hand side. That's where Madison Street would continue across that parcel. Property is bounded by those single-family subdivisions that are in the yellow boxes. The proposed row houses, the orange box there, we have received an application for a combination of duplex and quad multifamily homes that you'll see in the future adjacent to the duplexes. Madison Street connects across that waterway. That's the arrow on the right on the slide. And so it will provide these existing neighborhoods in this development with a second, more direct route to the Gardner Edgerton High School. Currently, the only access is via 175th Street, which I think probably the people that live out there are painfully aware after the street closures recently. The Kill Creek connection, the middle arrow, will extend to the properties to the north and eventually connect from 175th up to Celebration Park at 159th Street, hopefully. These are just some pictures. The terminus of Madison Street, terminus of 173rd, those are both on the east-hand side. Kill Creek drainage area from Kill Creek Road, looking east. Terminus of Kill Creek looking northwest. You see the sidewalk termination there. And then 172nd Street looking northeast. Oops. So currently there's a sanitary sewer line, that's the green, that traverses the site south of the waterway on the eastern portion. We have existing stormwater infrastructure that extends from the existing subdivision out towards the waterway. Those are the small brown lines you might be able to see. Electric service runs along all except the northern boundary, which is the red lines. Water service is available through those adjacent subdivisions and along Kill Creek Road. This development will allow greater resilience through those looped water and sanitary sewer lines instead of having those dead-end lines. Customary utility easements are being provided with the plat. I'm just kind of giving you all this infrastructure stuff all up ahead of time. The utility easement will be in the front of lots 19 through 54 on the north boundary. They wanted to preserve a natural tree line there and create a natural buffer on the rear of the lots to where Madison Street could continue across the entire north. Additionally, at the request of the fire district, they have come up with a creative solution that would allow them to have a larger diameter for the paved cul-de-sac with the same size right-of-way. So that may bump some of those sidewalks into easements on the private property, and this will be looked at in greater detail at the final plat time. So this superimposes the plat here just so you can get an idea of what they've planned on this new road network and how those connections will help fill in here. There will be sidewalks on both sides of the road. The extension of Madison Street is consistent with the new streets plan of the comprehensive plan. The new trails and greenways created in this project are shown in green. This will create a new natural amenity for these neighborhoods. It will also mean there's a new non-motorized connection between Kill Creek Road and Madison Street, and it will connect with the Kill Creek Trail as well. This is consistent with the future plans and the bike and pedestrian plan of the comprehensive plan, which indicates a requirement for trail connections through residential areas and floodplains as a component of new neighborhood development. The proposed plat also preserves the Greenway corridor that follows Kill Creek and serves as a natural flood mitigation infrastructure and ecological corridors as provided in the environmental features plan of the comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan, the way that the project supports the goals of the comprehensive plan are quite a few. One of the core themes is housing variety, and meaning that we would support ongoing investment in housing and attract new residents by providing housing that responds to a variety of users, including young professionals, new families, empty nesters, and seniors. Provides a range of options, also allows for all income levels to move toward home ownership. This is what it says in the comprehensive plan. Other housing objectives in the plan include the encouragement of housing and support services to allow seniors to age in place, promote infill residential development within incomplete subdivisions, which this certainly is, and to ensure new residential developments are sited within close proximity and with access to schools and parks. So it's also consistent with the low-density residential future land use description, which is described for detached single-family homes, but also duplexes and triplexes in low-density format with the character of single-family homes. And then the Land Development Code translates that low-density residential future land use into three possible zoning districts plus the planned districts that would go with them, which would be RE, R1, and R2. So this is consistent with the R2 was proposed. And so it's also in the new growth area residential plan, which is intended to contribute and enforce the city's existing character and identity. The lots in this plat are designed for smaller scale homes on smaller scale lots, but they are of similar character to existing homes. It's also meant to ensure that new development meets the requirements of the Land Development Code. And this development is designed to meet all standards for the detached house neighborhood building type and neighborhood yard frontage type. Also, it's supposed to ensure the character of new residential areas are compatible with existing neighborhoods and reflect the intended character of Gardner in terms of block size, configuration, housing scale, etc. So, as I said, this development is very similar to existing neighborhoods. And it also calls for us to work closely with those residential developers to encourage local development patterns that provide a variety of housing types and allow people to downsize and still stay in the subdivision or their neighborhood. Other staff findings, this is very consistent with the block patterns that are already existing, mainly because really you can't do anything else with this little sliver of land that's left. It does also achieve the code intent to minimize the number of lots accessing collector streets, and I'll show you how they're going to do that in the preliminary plat when we discuss that. The potential uses of the R2 district are compatible with the adjacent uses in zoning districts. As I said, there's a mix of housing in the area already. Only one additional use, which is multi-household living or duplex, may be permitted in the R2 district. That's not permitted in the R1. If the rezoning and the preliminary plat are approved as proposed for the detached house neighborhood single-family development, any change to accommodate duplexes would involve a revised preliminary plat, and that would again come before the Planning Commission. The beneficial impacts of being able to include those additional building types, which are the detached house neighborhood and the duplex, are that these building types do have to meet additional design standards, such as garage limits and less prominent, smaller scale driveways to promote walkable neighborhood design. So that enhanced design should actually benefit the surrounding neighborhoods. The property has remained vacant for 19 years, even though plans were developed then to develop it. It's not easy parcel to develop. You have the expense of constructing the 2 collector roadways, and you can't front any homes on them, or at least we have to minimize that. And you have to utilize the major infrastructure. You have to construct Madison Street across that floodplain. That's also an expensive prospect. Also, you can't place homes within the stream buffer and the floodplain that runs through the property. So they've worked really hard to overcome these limitations. One other thing that we think about when we're looking at rezonings is what are our community's changing needs. And population trends do indicate smaller household and family size. So the smaller lot residential may address a development type with a pent-up demand. And it's anticipated that the smaller lot residential uses will also provide a more affordable housing option and improve the ability of residents to live close to the jobs that are being created in the area. Approval of the application would benefit the community by providing that additional housing stock in a more efficient compact format which it increases fiscal efficiency and would help accommodate our anticipated population increase. So staff recommends that the Planning Commission recommend approval of the rezoning from R1 Single Family Residential District to R2 Two Family Residential District as proposed based on findings in the staff report.
Okay, we don't normally do it this way, but before Kelly moves to wherever Kelly's gonna move to, does anyone have any questions for her while she's at the microphone? All right, seeing no questions, we will, this is a public hearing item, so at this time I will open the public hearing. The applicant can come speak at this time. If there's more than one applicant, only one applicant at a time, I'll call the next person in once the person at the mic leaves the room. It's a long one.
Todd Allenbrand, 426 South Kansas Avenue, Olathe, Kansas, Payne and Brockway. And I'm here with the developers, Craig Schaefer and Brett Manifold. So if you have any questions that I can't answer, one of those gentlemen will come up. But before I say anything, I want to thank staff and the Planning Commission members and the city at large for, allowing this to go through. Really appreciate it because, as you know, developers are anxious people and they want to get their projects going. So this is very beneficial. We appreciate you guys being so accommodating. We read the staff report and we're in agreement with the staff. So, unless you want a full-blown presentation, we're pretty comfortable with where we're at. And if you have any questions, we're here to answer whatever we can.
Okay, do any commissioners have any questions for Mr. Allenbrand? All right, no questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
If there's any citizens that would like to speak on this matter, if one could please step to the podium. Seeing no one come through the door, it looks like there's no one that was going to speak on this public hearing matter. So I would accept a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Motion by McNear, do I have a second?
Second, Ford.
Okay, I have a motion by McNear, a second by Commissioner Ford. Close the public hearing. Is there any discussion on the motion? Okay, all those in favor state aye.
Aye.
Any against? Any abstentions? Motion passes, public hearing is closed. Start commissioner discussion. Commissioner Ford.
Commissioner Ford, as you said. I don't have any questions on it. I actually live in 171st and Kill Creek, and it'd be sad to see the field go away, but I'm happy that it looks like a really good plan has been brought together to do something with the land.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Deaton.
I have nothing.
Thank you. Commissioner McNear.
I like what I see with this plan. It looks like the developers have done a very good job of making good utilization of a tight space. It'll be interesting to see how the market accepts and reacts to the smaller lot size and smaller footprints. But if the market accepts it, it'll be a great project.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Mader?
No comments on the rezoning, thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Hanson?
No comments?
Commissioner Simmons Lee?
No comments.
And I have no comments, so with no further comments, I would accept a motion on this item.
Commissioner Ford here. After review of application Z2004, a zoning map amendment for parcel CF 221422-2007, located approximately 0.4 miles north of 175th Street along Kill Creek Road, in staff report dated March 24th, 2020, the Planning Commission recommends the governing body approve the request to rezone 38.6 acres from R1 single-family residential district to R2 two-family residential district.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Commissioner Ford, a second by Commissioner McNear. Is there any further comment on the motion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any against? Any abstentions? Motion passes 7-0. Now we'll continue with the same item, but PP-20-03.
Kelly Drake Woodward again. Okay, the subdivision standards of the Land Development Code provide limits to the block and cul-de-sac length. This proposed preliminary plat indicates cul-de-sac lengths consistent with the plans that were approved under the former code, but which would not be, which are longer than our current standards allow. However, we do have some exceptions to block and connectivity standards in the Land Development Code. With pertaining to that eastern cul-de-sac, blocks abutting or containing important natural features or otherwise creating parts of the civic space system or the trail may be larger, provided that the street layout preserves these features, which it does, and integrates them into the overall structure of the community. And you'll see that this layout preserves that floodplain area and provides that mid-block pedestrian connection through to a trail through the natural area. The western cul-de-sac is constrained by the existing residential development to the south, so they couldn't actually put another road through there to connect, to break up the block. So additional north-south road connection is really kind of seems unnecessary when it's that close to Kill Creek and that close to Madison, which are collectors. And we want to really funnel traffic to that direction. So instead they provided a mid-block pedestrian connection, which will hopefully provide an easier way for the residents that live on that cul-de-sac to get up to Madison Street. Well, there'll be probably a trail running through there. So even with these exceptions to the block and connectivity standards, the proposed preliminary plat meets the intent for street networks to provide for a safe and efficient movement of all potential users of the streets, use the streetscape design to call attention to differing contexts and better support development patterns and uses abutting the streets, and increase connectivity and improve options for access in the community. The fire district has also supported these cul-de-sac exceptions, provided that they increase the width of the cul-de-sacs to accommodate their fire trucks, and so they did that. And as I said previously, we're going to keep the right-of-way the same width, but they're going to provide the pedestrian easements onto the private property, so there'll still be sidewalks on both sides of all the roads. This will be shown at a later date. Here is how they plan to accommodate these special design requirements we have for the detached house neighborhood building type. So all these lots are capable of meeting our development and site design standards that they have chosen, including the design intent to provide those less prominent garages and the decreased front pavement areas by using shared driveways and the side access or setback garages. Is there any questions on that visual? These are on their plans. Additional staff findings on the plat is that they promote, the infill development will promote future development on adjacent property and benefit the existing development with new roadway, trail, pedestrian, and utility connections that provide more direct access to the high school and spreads the traffic load along multiple routes. So staff does recommend approval of the preliminary plat for Breckenwood Creek as proposed, finding all requirements have been met, subject to the recommended conditions of approval. And here's your suggested motion. And before I end, I just want to express it's really been a pleasure working with this development team. They've talked to us from the very beginning when they were trying to figure out what they wanted to build, all the way up to now, and they've been very earnest in their work. And they've developed here before, so I think we should all appreciate their efforts. Thank you.
If a single applicant would like to speak towards this, it'll be up to you. You're gonna get your steps in.
Todd Allenbrand, Payne and Brockway, 426 South Kansas Avenue. Like I said before, we read the staff report and we're in agreement. And if you guys have any questions that you need answered or here to answer.
Matter of fact, let's go ahead if anyone has any questions for the applicant so he doesn't have to walk all the way again.
I don't mind.
Go
It's
ahead.
good exercise.
It doesn't look like we have any questions for
Actually,
you.
just one question, just out of curiosity. So, I'll probably be able to answer this in my own head, but just curiosity, because I also live over in this area, and I'm very, very excited, not only to see connection, but to see our land development code being used, different types of housing. So I think that's great. So Madison Street, right? I'm reading here, that the construction of Madison Street as early in the project phasing as possible, and it looks like it's in phase 3 according to the plans. I'm just thinking as to, it's not in phase 1, it's in phase 3. And again, the market's gonna determine how quick everything goes. I just didn't know if there was, a thought as to why it's in phase 3 and not phase 1. And that just might be a selfish comment.
We're looking at possibly changing that. We're working with the city on some alternatives. So there's a chance that by the time this gets to Planning Commission, or by the time the final plat comes in, that it'll be changed around. Like Kelly mentioned, the cost for Madison Street alone is surprisingly very high considering for what the amount of the street, and mainly it's because there's a box culvert in it, and that's what's driving up the cost of that
topology over there, I
development.
get it. Sure.
But like I said, we're working with the city staff and legal and stuff to try to make a determination of a route to go.
Great, thank you. I just had to ask the question. I was curious about it and wanted to know, and I'm excited. This is great. So thank you for the answer. I appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. So this isn't a public hearing item. If anyone from the public would like to speak on this, I would have you approach one at a time. Okay, seeing no one approach, I'll just do it this way. Is there any commissioner discussion on this item? Okay, with no commissioner discussion, I would accept a motion.
I'll make a motion that after review of application PP-20-03, a preliminary plat for parcel CF 221422-2007, located approximately 0.4 miles north of 175th Street along Kill Creek Road, and preliminary plat dated February 7th, 2020, per revisions received March 16th, 2020, and staff report dated March 24, 2020. The Planning Commission approves the application as proposed, provided the following conditions are met. Item number 1, rezoning Z-20-04 is approved by the governing body. Item number 2, lot 58 will be revised on the final plat to meet the minimum area lot requirement. Item number 3, approval of the required level 2 transportation impact study by the City of Gardner Public Works Department.
Do I have a second?
I'd second that.
Okay, I have a motion by Commissioner Mader and a second by Commissioner McNear. Is there any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any against? Any abstentions? Motion passes 7-0. Item number 2 tonight's Prairie Trace. Start with A, Z-20-03.
Good evening, Commissioners. Michelle Leiniger, Principal Planner. We're doing kind of a round robin here. Just wanted to start out with an overall kind of summary of what you see with this this entire project, I should say. This is one of 3 proposed development adjacent to the I-35 and 175th Street interchange that will feature commercial, multifamily, and single-family land use. 2 of the proposed districts are regular zoning districts, the C3 and the R3. 2 of the proposed districts are planned districts, and that includes the RP1 and the RP2. The first item here is the rezoning for the commercial area. This is the area we're looking at. If you look at the upper right-hand corner, you can see a vicinity map that shows the interchange of I-35 and 175th Street, and the subject property is just south and east of that. Closer in is the picture on the bottom left. The request is rezone a portion, which is the northern portion of the 2 parcels shown in the slide, from county rezoning designation to city commercial designation. These parcels were annexed into the city in September of 2019 and are currently unapproved agriculture. The subject property, again, is located the north 175th Street, and to the east is Clare Road. And then you'll see the interstate on the northwest. This shows existing infrastructure. The things to note, which have been obstacles that the applicant has had to work with. The yellow line going through the property is a Southern Star gas transmission line. There is an easement around this for 66 feet. That's a no-bill, pretty much do nothing. Additionally, on the southern part of the development are Evergy power lines. Those you can see in red, actually around the whole property. So those are some of the obstacles that this development has, in addition to the interstate being nearby. For this project, what you see outlined in yellow is the proposed C3 property. The underlying colors are the existing county zoning. The county zoning is retained on the properties at annexation until the applicant has requested rezoning to city property or city zoning. So the red you'll see is PRB2, which is a planned residential neighborhood business district. The blue on the left is a PEC3, which is a planned industrial neighborhood park, light industrial. And then the green on the bottom is a rural, so that's ag and single family residential. So we're looking at the northern part. What you see imposed underneath is one of the draft of the preliminary plat and preliminary development plan for the single family development. So just to reference you as to which part we're looking at with this application is the yellow part. And then this also gives you the visual of the new proposed arterial street, which is the larger road that connects from 175th Street and then goes south and to the south and west, which parallels the interstate. And then a new collector will be from that arterial out to the east to Clare Road. This is a visual from the New Century Air Center future land use plan. This is also within a mile of the properties within a mile of New Century Air Center. So, and you've seen these before, these also have to be reviewed by the Johnson County Airport Board and the Johnson County Board of County Commissioners. What you'll see here is the blue is the 1 mile buffer of airport property. So that's a 1 mile radius of, like I said, the airport boundaries. Those are the areas that the county has authority by state statute to review development proposals in. And then the red line with the colored designated future land use is their adopted airport interest area. And this is out of their future land use plan from back in the 90s. These identify future land uses, recommended future land uses for their impact to airport facilities. So here's a closer in shot of the property with the future land use map. Those vertical strips, you'll see one on the west side and then one that runs kind of through the middle. Those are flight paths. The one on the right-hand side or the east side, that one has been abandoned. So it is no longer applicable for the airport, but the western one is very much applicable. And you can see that it touches the subject property as a whole. And that is a significant impact to the development. And you can see that there's a mix of land uses that is identified in that plan. The red is a general commercial. The medium, or the orange is a medium density with up to 12.5 dwelling units per acre. The light yellow is a residential, and then the lavender color is the airport industrial. And it kind of matches the current zonings of the property. And this is the future land use map out of the comprehensive plan and the I-35 and 175th Street sub-area plan. In this plan, we incorporated a project for the property that was moving forward, and that's why you'll see street outlines that are a little different on this property. That has since been deemed not appropriate anymore, so the applicant is looking for something different, as noted. The darker red on the north side of the property and west side is regional commercial, sorry. And then the lavender is light industrial and commercial. And then the dark purple is heavy commercial and industrial. And then the green is Parks, Rec, and open space. So you can see that some of the areas are comparable to the future land use map. Others aren't, and those will be discussed in the project applicable. The heavy commercial zoning district, the proposal is for C3, and that definitely is associated with the regional commercial land use. Additionally, the C2 general business district would be an option, M1, and the activity center plan district. Another thing to point out is that the street network very closely follows what was suggested in the plan. So those are consistent. Staff findings, the proposed rezoning is consistent with the comprehensive plan, in particular the I-35 and 175th Street interchange sub-area plan. The street network matches the concepts in the sub-area plan. It is good planning to concentrate commercial opportunities near regional transportation routes and arterial streets. The extension of the utilities for this development will also help other future development. The rezoning supports the goals of the strategic plan to annex land that can be developed for commercial opportunities to diversify the tax base. Staff does recommend approval. In your staff report, there was a letter from Johnson County Planning staff, and we tried to address some applicable concerns in our motions. And you'll see that in the suggested motion, staff recommends approval with the conditions of parking, lighting, and other improvements shall not conflict with airport aircraft operations. Required FAA documents, including Form 7460, shall be submitted to and approved by the FAA for all aspects of the development. Number 3, affidavits of interest regarding New Century Airport shall be filed in the chain of title of the subject properties, and appropriate language for airport affidavit shall be included with the final plat. Number 4, final plats must be reviewed and approved by the BOCC prior to the filing of the final plats. Just wanted to add that on your desk, there was another letter from the county for public comment with some, actually it's more of a summary of the previous letter and what they would like to see added for conditions for the county. I think we've tried to address all that are applicable. This will have to go to the city for final determination before it goes through the county for their review. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Okay, this is a public hearing item, so at this time I will open the public hearing. I believe our applicant is online, so when you get him on, if you'd state your name and address.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
My name is Travis Schramm. I'm the president of Grata Development. My address is 11282 South Belmont Street in Olathe, Kansas. On this application, I want to thank Michelle and the team for their work on it. Obviously, this is a challenging piece of ground, and we have a couple of applications before you tonight. I think the primary thing I wanted to stress about this particular application was that we've had numerous conversations with Jay Leipzig, Sean Penley over at the county, talking about their thoughts on what was needed to comply with the needs of the airport. And he put that letter to you all this morning that we reviewed, and then it says that, you know, I generally agree with the requirements that they're wanting to impose on this section, and I feel pretty strongly that we're going to figure out exactly how that works, and that they have a pretty good picture of what we're trying to do, and we have pretty good working relationships. So I feel really strongly that when we get a preliminary plan together, obviously it's going to go back in front of them, but I think we're pretty well on the same page, and we're looking to do that specifically in multifamily relatively soon. So I have some more comments that I'll reserve for the other areas of the application, but I'd be glad to answer any questions that you might have on this or anything else.
Any of the commissioners have any questions for the applicant? Okay, doesn't look like anyone has any questions for you, so we'll come back to you for each part of this. Thank you. If there's anyone from the public that would like to speak on this particular public hearing, if you would approach the podium, just one. Okay, seeing no one approach the podium, I'll accept the motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by Commissioner McNear and a second by Commissioner Hanson to close the public hearing. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Okay, I would accept collect myself. Does anyone have any discussion that they would like to have on this matter? No? No discussion? Okay, I accept a motion on this.
After review of application Z-20-03, a zoning map amendment for portions of parcels 2F23142930001 and 2F23142910001, located southwest of the intersection of West 175th Street and South Clear Road, and staff report dated March 24th, 2020. The Planning Commission recommends the governing body approve the application as proposed, provided the following conditions are met, actions are taken. Number 1, parking, lighting, and other improvements shall not conflict with airport aircraft operations. Number 2, required FAA documents, including Form 7460, shall be submitted to and approved by FAA for all aspects of the development. Number 3, affidavits of interest regarding the New Century Airport shall be filed in the chain title of the subject properties, and appropriate language for airport affidavits shall be included with the final plats. Number 4, final plats must be reviewed and approved by the BOCC prior to filing the final plats.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Commissioner Simmons Lee and a second by Commissioner Ford. Any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any against? Any abstentions? Motion passes 7-0. Now we'll go on to Z-20-02.
Michelle Leininger, Principal Planner. This item is the next piece of the Prairie Trace development, the multifamily piece. On your screen is the area that is identified for the proposed R3 Garden Apartment District. Something I want you to remember is that the previous zoning proposal and this proposal are both for standard-based zoning districts. With this property development, the next step would be either a site plan or to rezone to a planned district. So you would see something as the next step, including a plat. So you will not see at this time, a development plan with either one of these, which is different from the single family portion. Again, just to reference you, the interstate is to the north of this property, and 175th is on, well, the interstate is on the north of the proposed area. Generally, the property is bound by 175th Street on the north and Clare Road on the east. Again, this property is currently zoned with a county PEC district, which is a planned industrial. Here is a visual again from, well, it's got a phase of the single family phase of the proposal imposed on this just to visually connect you, but it also has the flight path from the county shown. As I said before, the eastern flight path is no longer applicable, but the western one very much is. This is Flight Corridor C, and it will impact future development on the subject parcel. It generally encompasses the west 125 feet of the subject property, which it shows closer on the bottom right-hand side. The county planning staff, again, has proposed some restrictions, and that is included both in the letter in your packet and the one provided for you today. Their issue with the development being close to the flight path is the congregation of people, birds, the potential zones where crash zones could occur. Really, it's the protection of those flight zones is what they're looking for. Again, here's the county future land use map showing the rezoning area. The R3 shown on here, and you can see that the county future land use map identifies it for Airport Industrial Park. The county is concerned also with the height of the buildings within that flight corridor or near the flight corridor. Maximizing the open space and having no permanent water features or drainage near the flight corridors. These can concentrate birds and aircrafts are not good. They're also concerned with the gross density and configuration of the residential development. The county staff recommended that the maximum density of the multifamily residential shall be 12.5 units per acre gross. In our land development code, the anticipation would be for the garden apartment type, building type, and a minimum lot size of 1,500 square feet per dwelling unit. This means 29 units could be built in one gross acre, which is obviously higher than what the county was looking at. Provided the units are stacked appropriately to meet the 40% building coverage, maximum footprint, and some of the land being preserved for parking and access drives. Again, here's the future land use map out of the I-35 and 175th Street plan. This area is mainly the regional commercial and a little bit of the green where you catch the floodplain. Some staff findings, the infrastructure goal. The proposed streets that will serve the parcel meet the general configuration as conceptualized. The applicable sub-area plan. The city is committed to providing infrastructure to this new growth area of the community. It's consistent with the comprehensive plan housing goals and intent of the R3 district. It's consistent with the City of Gardner strategic plan as far as economic opportunity and diversification of the tax base. Staff does recommend approval of the rezoning with the additional motions to include number 1, parking and lighting and other improvements shall not conflict with the airport and aircraft operations. Number 2, required FAA documents including the Form 7460 shall be submitted to and approved by the FAA for all aspects of the development. Number 3, affidavit of interest regarding the New Century Airport shall be filed in the chain of title of subject properties, and appropriate language for the airport affidavit shall be included with the final plats. Number 4, final plats must be reviewed and approved by the BOCC prior to the filing of the final plats.
Okay, thank you. This is a public hearing item, so at this time I will open the public hearing on Z-20-02. Would the applicant like to speak on this one?
Kind of similar comments to the last application. We're working with the airport authority. We feel confident that we're going to get a plan together. We're obviously going to limit our buildings to 12.5 units an acre and provide the requested buffering from the west property line to stay out of the primary flight corridor. But other than that, if you guys have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Are there any commissioners that have questions for the applicant? Okay, we have no questions for you on this one either. This is a public hearing item, so if anyone from the public would like to speak on this particular zoning change, if you would come to the podium, just one of you. Okay, no one's coming to the podium, so I would take a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Commissioner Hanson and a second by Commissioner McNear to close the public hearing. Is there any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those against? Any abstentions? Motion passes. Public hearing is closed. All right, time for commissioner discussion. Again, instead of going around on this one, I'll just ask if any commissioner has any discussion item on this. No one has any discussion items, so I would accept a motion.
I propose a motion after review of application Z-20-02, a zoning map amendment for a portion of parcel 2F 231429-1001 located southwest of the intersection of 175th Street and South Clare Road, and staff report dated March 24, 2020. The Planning Commission recommends the governing body approve the application as proposed, providing the following conditions are met and actions are taken. Number 1, parking, lighting, and other improvements shall not conflict with airport/aircraft operations. Number 2, required FAA documents, including Form 7460, shall be submitted to and approved by FAA for all aspects of the development. Number 3, affidavits of interest regarding the New Century Airport shall be filed in the chain of title of the subject properties, and appropriate language for airport affidavits shall be included with the final plats. 4, final plats must be reviewed and approved by the BOCC prior to filing the final plats.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Commissioner McNear and a second by Commissioner Mader on this. Do we have any questions on the motion or any comments on the motion? Okay. All those in favor state aye.
Aye.
Any against? Any abstentions? Motion passes 7-0.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
if you would hold on for a second, our attorney was on the phone and the call dropped, so we have to call him again, so
Okay,
hold
sounds
on
good.
just a second.
Hello?
Hey Ryan, we got you back on.
Okay. I've been watching on live stream. You guys are crushing it.
Thanks.
All right. I'll put you on mute.
Whenever you're ready, and they come back.
We'll give him a few more minutes. Okay, we'll go ahead with item Z-20-01.
Good evening, Council. Larry Powell, Director, Business and Economic Development Department. This item, you've seen the images several times already. So we have the planned area single-family development in this particular aspect. The current zoning for this is currently zoned RUR, or rural residential, and the RPB2, which is the planned neighborhood business, retail business, which is the dark purple area. The commercial is the red, and the green is the, purple is the PEC planned light industrial, and the green is the RUR. So the yellow area that you see here is the first section, which is the market. Yeah, you've lost me on the slides. Sorry about this. Here we go. The properties were annexed into the city on September 3rd, 2019 with ordinance 2622, and the properties are two parcels located along Interstate 35, as we've said in the past. They have the impediments of the Southern Star gas pipeline, and also Evergy has power lines located along the southern boundaries. Clare Road is to the east, I-35 and Santa Fe is to the north and the west, and Cedar Niles Road, if it went through, would be located on the west side. The Gardner Comprehensive Plan, which was adopted in 2014, did not identify these detailed areas as the future land use for the interstate, but did designate it as the southeast quadrant market determined as our growth area, with regional commercial identified at the interchanges, and the plan was directed staff to further study the area in the future, which we did, and we came up with the future direction, which you've seen in the other two slides, which showed the industrial area to the south and the commercial area to the north, and then that now is being asked to be changed. So the RP2 zone that you currently see on the map would be the market analysis area for the small single-family homes, and the RP1 at the lower part of that screen would be the larger housing area, which would be single-family housing. The entire area actually is single-family housing, but the reason for the RP2 zoning is it allocates the section to be used into the smaller district home areas. The staff analysis on the zoning amendment, pardon me. The staff analysis for the zoning map amendments would show that the character of the neighborhood, including the design of streets, civic spaces, and other open spaces, meet the scale, pattern, and design of the buildings and the operation of the use of the land of the buildings. The site is rural in nature and as are on the adjacent properties, and is currently used for cultivation of the crops. So these facilities, as they're basically facilitated in the future, would meet the guidelines for the future application of the zoning as asked for. And if I skip ahead to the consistency with the comprehensive plan we've talked about a little bit. So the staff findings for the rezoning, the site is rural in nature and would be the first urban development in the area on the south side of 175th Street and of I-35, and the proposed zoning and potential uses are consistent with the nearby properties. The property is not suitable for the current zoning as it holds in the county zoning within the city, so therefore needs to hold the new city zones, and the rezoning will not detrimentally affect nearby properties. The property would have great hardships if not rezoned, as no development could occur as is currently proposed, and the zoning is consistent with various goals and policies of the comprehensive plan, and the project will require expansion of utilities to the east side of the interstate, which will support more development. This is the preliminary development plan, which we will talk about, that it goes along with the rezoning. And the RP1 portion, which is the estates, contains roughly 94 acres and 194 lots. And the RP2 zoning portion, which is called the Meadows, contains roughly 42 acres and 162 lots. The development includes 20 acres of open space in total, which is part of the Greenway Trail and amenities area. And those are kind of hard to see in there, but the open spaces are basically surrounded by housing and are part of the considered also the drainage way. The new Trails Parkway would be constructed as part of the Phase 1 of the Meadows from 175th to around the first curve to where the street turns south, and 178th Street will be constructed past Houston Street in Phase 1. In summary, we have the lots as we've talked about under the two different development areas. They're both running on the detached house suburban neighborhood. The minimum lot size of 8,000 is met. The Meadows is a little bit underneath the 6,000 requirement, which is 5,750 square feet. The minimum lot widths are consistent with the requirements, as are the setbacks. The rear lot setbacks have been adjusted to affect the open space requirements, and we'll talk about those in the deviations, as is the building coverages, which will also be talked about in associated deviations. The frontage types are considered to be neighborhood yard, and the access limits have some deviation requirements, as will the hardscape allocations. And those that are starred will have those in a future conversation in a few minutes. So the staff findings for this particular part plans reflects generally accepted planning and urban design principles, and the plan really supports the various goals and policies of the comprehensive plan of the city of Gardner. And the benefits of the flexibility and the standards proposed will promote the public health, safety, and welfare of the community by preserving the wetland and stream areas and extending city utility services for the growth and the future development. The first deviation request is in street network and design. The section number is given to you there, and the typical cross sections for the local neighborhood. And basically, this is the standard for a 5-foot sidewalk on both sides of the street. And they're proposing really to only have 5-foot sidewalks on one side of the street, or it would also have an adjacent trail. But the result of where the trails and the sidewalks go do almost give you two areas on most of the lots. So although it doesn't give you a 5-foot sidewalk in all the areas, it does give the public the walkability that is asked for in the comprehensive plan. Deviation request number 2 in the estates section, as you can see, has to do with the minimum rear setback section. The standard is 25 feet, and they want to propose 20 feet when it's adjacent to open space. That is basically in the estates or the small housing area, and has to do with the type standards of the suburban detached house. The limits to the potential building coverage of these lots not adjacent to open space would have to be considered, and staff has identified lots that are not adjacent to the open space, including lots that have less than 50% of the rear or side lot line length. That's a tongue twister. Or lots adjacent to the open space that does not have enough depth to make the intended impact. So the following lots are listed on the in the staff report for you, but there are lots 28, 29, 40, 57 through 60, 82, 86, 87, 96 to 108, 117 to 119, 123 to 128, 131 to 133, 141 to 146, 152, 153, 162, 164 to 170, and 186 to 194. And this is the 61 of the proposed 194 estate lots, or approximately 31%. That's asking for that deviation of 25 feet to 20 feet. The applicant has a part of his presentation to talk to you about those deviations. Deviation 3 is a request also in the estates area, and as you can see outlined in the specific building type standards, thank you. It is the suburban building coverage, and the standard is 30%. He's asking for a proposed 40%. This is a 10% increase in lot coverage, which is fairly substantial. And as stated in the previous deviation, the lots adjacent to the shared open space can utilize the adjacent open space as mitigation to this increased building coverage. So the offset here is the being adjacent to open space. You don't necessarily feel that you're on a smaller lot simply because you have a larger lot on the lot coverage. It is recommended that this reduction only apply to lots adjacent to the common open space, and those are listed again in the report for you rather than read them in for you. They will also have to, the lots that are not adjacent to the open space would meet the 30% lot coverage. So that's 61 again of the proposed 194 estate lots, or 31%. Deviation request number 4 with the estates area again has to do with the design standards for neighborhood yard access width. And the standard width is 15% or 20 foot max, and the proposed is 30% or 20 foot max. The neighborhood local street type is being utilized in this comparison analysis, which pairs with the neighborhood frontage type. So for a standard 70-foot wide lot, the driveway normally would be permitted to be 10.5 feet wide within the entire frontage area to the house, which seems a little bit on the small side for a normal driveway width. So it's acknowledged that some people are looking for larger driveways to offset storage in the garage. This is outside parking storage. And the requested deviation will need to be revised to reflect what is shown in the diagram, which was on your staff report, in order to allow for the driveway to be widened to a 3-car garage width. The access limits are intended to maintain space for on-street parking between the accesses and to maintain green space in the public realm. So what we're really trying to look for is, in the staff report, is a balance between the smaller lots and bigger lots and the amount of hard space and the open space requirements. So that's one of the deviation requirements that will need some discussion. The access and hardscape allocations are actually calculations that go together to help create an inviting public realm. And if the design limits change, the hardscape allocations need to increase to compensate for the larger driveway. That was number 4. Did we go backwards?
No, you're fine.
Oh. Yeah. We've lost it? Okay. So the next one would be deviation request number 5, also of estates. The section number is given in frontage design and design standards for the neighborhood yard hardscape allocation. And this is be like what we're talking about on the driveway from the apron up to the house. So that's what we're talking about when we're talking about the actual hardscape area. So the standard is 5% to 20%, and the proposed 37% on the rectangular lots and 49% on cul-de-sac lots. And I know all of you that have lived anywhere in our community and have driven around have noticed that in our existing cul-de-sacs, it's very hard to have nothing but driveways lining the cul-de-sac. And that's just because the narrowness of the cul-de-sac and the frontage, the pie-shaped lots just don't really allow you to have much of an area other than the hardscape area when you initially leave the roadway. This is really represented in what the request is here, and that's why they're asking for the deviation, is because they just can't meet that deviation based on the larger cul-de-sac size that the fire department's requiring. That's actually eating into that, so there's a deviation request for that for the cul-de-sac lots. So the hardscape percentage is a similar intent as the access width limit, and they work together. This hardscape allocation provides for a certain amount of hardscape or pavement and a certain amount of turf or landscape in the frontage area, and this softens the impact of the amount of paved area in the public realm. It also makes the area more walkable when you have more green space in there. And the applicant is asking for a 17% increase on the standard rectangular lots and a 29% increase on the cul-de-sac lots. And this accommodates the larger driveway widths as requested in the previous deviation. The cul-de-sac lot has an irregular shaped front yard and more road surface in front than the standard 50-foot street width would have. And this can have a substantial impact on the area, and you can see that when we look at if we get the pictures up later. Deviation request number 6 with the estates section, which is the frontage design standards, neighborhood yard sidewalk connection. This has to do with a standard 4-foot wide sidewalk between the sidewalk and the front entry feature. So in the walkable neighborhood that we're talking about in this, the design requirement is for the sidewalk to go from the front of the house to the street, not from the front of the house, make a left turn or right turn and go to the driveway, which is what we see in most standard neighborhoods. And the proposed for that is it gives you, again, that walkability or that visual aspect of being a more walkable area between the driveway and the front entry feature. So the intent of the standard is just particularly to be a visual not impediment, but visual positive for the area, and so it's to orientate the pedestrian type of the framework of the street as experienced from the public realm to the front door. So if you're from the street looking, you know where the front door is. The sidewalk leads you, in fact, to that particular area. Often driveways are parked with cars, making it less inviting to get in the front of the house, and hopefully as we go through life, we don't experience, I know we all have, where we're walking down the sidewalk and somebody's parked their car in their driveway and it hangs over the sidewalk and we have to go into the street or around it or whatever. So hopefully what we're doing here is we're giving the area, the hardscape area, to be deep enough off of there so we don't block the sidewalks. So the applicant is proposing a sidewalk from the front of the house to the driveway, and having any walk-up helps to maintain that visual connection to this. So that's basically what we're looking for in this particular deviation. In the Meadows section on deviation request number 7, what we're looking for here is to change the standard detached neighborhood minimum lot size. As it is in our land code, it's supposed to be 6,000 square feet, and they're proposing 5,750 square feet. And this is basically a 4% reduction in lot area per lot, which adds up to be a substantial amount of property when you spread it across the entire subdivision. But the code allows for an administrative adjustment for up to 5% for altering a building standard, and this falls within the built-in flexibility of the code. So this deviation actually, even though it's been asked and we bring it to you as a deviation, falls within the code and is not an issue at this point in time. And this would apply to 41 or 25% of the Meadows lots, with the average lot area in this portion of the development being 7,377 square feet. Deviation request number 8 for the Meadows has to do again with the detached house neighborhood minimum rear setback. And this specific building type standards for the detached house has to do with it's 25 feet again, and they're proposing 20 feet on lots adjacent to the open space. And once again, basically this is the same argument or the same request that we're next to open space. We have a visual, it's like being on the golf course. You have this larger vista behind your house, so it looks like there's a bigger area from which to actually enjoy versus the 25 feet. You're not going to notice a 5-foot difference too much, but the 5 foot does make a difference, in fact, in how the house sits on the lot. So basically they're taking this 5 foot to allow for the house movement within the lot in order to make it a better proposition. So this limits the building increase to lots adjacent to the open space on the rear and the side. The setbacks on the rear and side, by the way, they're being met without any problems. The staff has identified lots that are not adjacent to open spaces as including lots that have more than 50%, have less than 50% of the rear or side lot length lots adjacent to open space that do not have enough depth to make the intended impact. So we do have some lots that this would apply to, but they're not next to open space. So you're going to have to decide how you want to handle those lots and that deviation. You can either grant it across the board, or you can figure out if you want to, figure some other type of deviation application for that. And there are 69 of the proposed 162 Meadow lots, or 43% in that particular category. And again, the applicant will have some words that he wishes to address to those deviations for you to hear. Number 9 for the Meadows, this detached house neighborhood building coverage, specific building type standards. Detached house has to do with building coverage again. The standard is 40%, and they're asking for 45%. And this is a 5% increase in the lot coverage. And as previously stated, lots adjacent to the shared open space can utilize that open space as mitigation to this building coverage item. However, we do have lots that meet the maximum area, and they're listed there. And there are 61 of the proposed 162 lots, or 31% in coverage area. Deviation number 10 with the Meadows, again, has to do with the standard facade, 25% of the facade if front-loaded, and this is the garage door width limits. We've talked about this several times in other applications, mostly in when we're dealing with the driveways and facades for twin homes or duplexes or triplexes or row houses. But in this particular case, because of the size of the front of the lots and the size of the house, then we're dealing with that same percentage number. So the standard is 25% of the facade if front-loaded, counting the garage door width only. Remember, we only count the width of the door. Some standards in other cities count the whole garage. So if you have a 30-foot wide garage and a 16-foot door, they're counting 30 foot, we're counting 16 foot. So we're trying to give the most variables in our percentage that we can give them by only measuring that, that garage door width. So the intent of the garage limits is to enhance the streetscape in areas intended for more compact and walkable development. And to mitigate the effect of the narrow lots with frequent repetition along the block, by limiting front-loaded garage accesses and encouraging setback garages or side or rear access garages. And it's likely that the structures will be basically about 40 feet wide. When we use the amount of side yard setbacks, we can pretty much determine that the house is going to be about 40 feet wide. And this calculates to 40% of the building being garage door when you use a 16-foot garage door. So the Planning Commission has previously discussed garage door limits as part of a potential text amendment regarding garage door limits on the duplex building types. And they recommended that the governing body change the garage limits to 30% of the facade if front loaded. And this would potentially allow for one double car garage or one unit, or two single car garages for one unit on the front of a duplex built on the minimum lot size of 70 foot. Now, the Planning Commission has discussed amending these limits for detached building types. So if you wanted to think about, when you discuss this tonight, as making an exception or accepting this request, it could be with the intent knowing that we could be directed to bring the change back to the Planning Commission at a future date that would amend the land code for this particular item. So in fact, we'd just be allowing this to become an item that would have been allowed once we made the change. Deviation request 11 for the Meadows, and this is for, again, for the access width limits. The standard is 15%, 20-foot max, and the proposed is for 40%, which is a 20-foot max on lots adjacent to the open space. So for the standard 50-foot wide lot in the Meadows, the driveways, again, are permitted to be only 7.5 foot wide all the way to the frontage line. That's pretty narrow for a car. So the access limits are intended to maintain the space for on-street parking between accesses and to maintain green space in the public realm. And it is acknowledged that some people are looking for the larger driveways to offset storage in the garage, though with the smaller lots, the code anticipates the utilization of alternatives to address the same access limitations. And this would be one that you might want to discuss later. We have the deviations listed on separate slides for your discussion purposes. We're almost done. So deviation 12 for the Meadows has to do with the frontage design standards for neighborhood yard hardscape allocation again, and the standard is 5% to 20%, proposed 40% on rectangular lots and 45% on cul-de-sacs. And this is basically what we've talked about earlier, the hardscape percentage of a similar intent across the access width limit, and they work together to form how much hardscape we allow in the front yard. The applicant is asking for a 20% increase on standard rectangular lots and a 25% increase on cul-de-sac lots. And this accommodates for the larger driveways requested in the previous deviation. A cul-de-sac lot has an irregular shaped front yard and more road surface in front than a lot standard foot wide, and which can have a substantial impact on the area. Deviation 13, which would be the last one. The frontage design standards for the neighborhood's sidewalk connection. The standard is 4 foot wide on the sidewalk between the sidewalk and the front entry feature, and they're proposing 4 foot wide sidewalk between the driveway and the front feature. So the standard here is the driveway versus the front walk. Excuse me. The intent of the standard is to promote the walkability and pedestrian orientation framework as experienced from the public realm to the front door of the house. And again, we've talked about the cars parking on the driveway, which makes it less inviting to get there if it's on the driveway versus the sidewalk. So the applicant is proposing a sidewalk from the front of the house to the driveway. But having any walkway here helps us maintain this visual connection to the house and allows for the proper orientation for the pedestrian. So those are all the deviation. And the deviation for discussions on the states would be number 4, the access width standard a 15% 20-foot max to proposed 30% 20-foot max. And the hardscape allocation, number 5, for the standard 5 to 20% proposed on the 37% of rectangular lots and 49% of cul-de-sacs. Number 10, the garage limits, which we previously just discussed, on the standard 25% of the facade of front-loaded, counting the garage door width only, to a proposed 40% of counting a 16-foot garage door width, which is the standard garage door width on most single-family homes. Number 11, which is the access width standard, is 15% 20-foot max to a proposed 40% 20-foot max. And number 12, the hardscape allocation, which is the standard 5% to 20% with a proposed 40% on rectangular lots and 45% on cul-de-sacs. And then we have a staff recommendation that recommends approval on the rezoning and associated preliminary development plan with the conditions outlined in the suggested motion section. And please note that the condition reads potential deviations, because when we do the listing of the deviations for you and whether you want to approve them or not approve them, the ones that are in black are the ones that have support already built into the staff report, and the ones that are in red that we'll go through in a minute are the ones that the applicant is going to have an opportunity to make his case known to you for those deviations to be applied, and they're the ones that we previously just listed on the previous 2 slides. So there's your suggested motion of the application and your suggested items. We would need to look at labeling this is this continuation, and then the red items are the ones that we really need to have discussion by the planning commission prior to taking a vote of the proposing the motion, so that you know which ones we will be including as opposing. Or you could, if you want to deny one of these, but you want to deny it, you want to deny what we've suggested, but you have some other item that you would like to support it with in a replacement, you could do that also. So the discussion, I think, what now would be, you would open it up for the planning commission. Public hearing, review.
All right, at this time, we will open the public hearing on Z-20-01. Be time for the applicant to speak. Can you give your name and address again, please?
Great. Travis Schramm, I'm the president of Grotto Development. My address is 11282 South Belmont Street in Olathe, Kansas. I wanted to, I put a slide deck together to kind of go through this plan in the whole, because I think it's really important that we kind of look at this plan as a whole project. It's an ecosystem that was designed to conquer some really difficult problems. And so the first thing I want to do is show the site as a whole and the problems that kind of go through it. Staff mentioned, obviously, there's no real access to the north and west of this property. We've got Southern Star gas pipeline through the site with a 66-foot easement. We've got Evergy lines on the south side, and we have these wetlands through the project. And I hope you can see that slide, but you'll see them in green outlined through the project. And so one of the things that we were attempting to do when we laid this project out was to stay out of those wetlands. And so that's why you see a lot of these rear yard setback issues of why didn't we go ahead and press that all the way into the wetlands? Well, at $55,000 an acre in mitigation costs, plus having to deal with additional runoff issues, becomes really cost prohibitive on the site. And so we designed a plan that avoided the wetlands to the best we possibly could, that contemplated the gas line, that contemplated the power lines, that contemplated the flight corridor to the west side, some floodplain in the southwest corner, and tried to work those all into a comprehensive plan. And so this is the kind of the rendering of the comprehensive plan, and you'll see New Trails is what we're referring to as the commercial elements. Prairie Forge is the multifamily element. Prairie Trace the Meadows and the estates you'll see kind of on this slide as well. And so what we're talking about now is the single family stuff. And the single family here is shown kind of the Meadows is in the orange and the estates is in the red. And what we're doing here is we're utilizing a different product type rather than like a multifamily or a duplex or a townhouse to buffer the traditional single family homes from the retail and the multifamily. And that's how we kind of got to this concept. This concept was put in front of the city governing body in terms of how do we develop something on this spot. It's really challenging because water is 1.5 miles to the east. Sewer is on the other side of the interstate. We're switching the power and going to Gardner power, but then we have to bring that power across the interstate. We have actually 2 gas service areas that serve this area, and so we're working with 2 different gas companies to bring gas to the site. It's challenging. It's a very challenging piece of property, and it goes to show that there's been some challenges to getting it online in the past. So the biggest problem that we're seeing and why there's a need for so many deviations is we're intermingling these 2 different product types. We're intermingling the narrow lot, villa style lots with the traditional single family lots. And in doing that, we're using the same street type, and then it dictates the same yard type. And so I really want to dig down into what is it that we're trying to build. And I want to make that presentation to you tonight. This is what we're trying to put on the street. And this is how the path through the code that we found how to do that, right? So I'm going to focus first on the estates. This is kind of a diagram of the yard that we're talking about. And what we're trying to do is, we're a developer. We sell lots to builders. Now, a team of about 26 different building companies that build in our developments here in the metro area. We try to take a look at what we think they're going to build in this area, and then we try to take the most non-conforming house and put it on the most restrictive lot, and that's what we're trying to put together here. And so when we're asking for these building coverage deviations, when we're asking for access limit deviations, we're saying, look, we want to bring the biggest and best houses that we can bring to Gardner, that our builders want to build, that the market demands, and we want to make sure that we're not back in front of this buyer, pounding on the city doors, trying to get a deviation request. We want to do them now, upfront and early. And so what you're looking at here is just a standard suburban lot, very similar to what you guys are doing in other developments. The issue that we're trying to solve right now is the access on a cul-de-sac lot. And I pulled up an example here of Symphony Farms. And so what you're seeing is 20-foot wide driveways, at the right of way. And this is, and these are 35, 30. If we used a traditional suburban yard type, we wouldn't be having this discussion about some of these variations, but we are. But again, it's not about do we check the boxes, it's about what are we trying to build. And so I thought I'd use an example of a development that we have at 167th and Merlin called Boulder Creek. It's exactly what we're trying to build here. Here you see aerial photos. You've got some cul-de-sacs with the access issues that we were talking about. But it's a beautiful development, and it's doing extremely well. These are the house types that are going in there out at Boulder Creek, stuff that's similar to what you're seeing in Gardner. And it's a very traditional style home, 3-car garage, 3-car driveway narrowing down to 2 or about a 20-foot width at the edge of the right-of-way. And so when we talk about the deviations, what are we trying to avoid? Well, this is getting built in Gardner right now. It's a very traditional style, and it's going to do well. And because of the intermingling, we're having to request those deviations. And so I'm going to move on, and I'm going to talk about the Meadows, which is a different product, right? This is what's causing some of the issues because we're intermingling this product with the other product. Now, this is a product, it's a 50-foot lot, and it's a 2-car front-facing garage. And I think that's the primary question tonight is we can talk about all the different code deviations we want to talk about, but it really boils down to one simple question. Will Gardner allow 2-car front-facing garages on a single-family home at a 50-foot lot? That's every deviation that we're talking about essentially from this point forward boils down to that very concept. And so I wanted to show you some developments in other cities that are doing extremely well right now that we modeled this after. The first one is, this is Canyon Creek Villas. This is Cedar Creek Parkway, Canyon Creek Parkway in Lenexa. You can see, narrow lots, 2-car front-facing driveways. These are some elevations of those houses, which I think are beautiful houses. And very similar, some of these are builders that we would probably bring with us to Gardner for this very project. This is Cottonwood Canyon in Lenexa. This is on the Cottonwood Canyon golf course there, just to the south and west of city center. Again, 50-foot lots. Very similar elevations there. Grayson Place in Olathe, and just east of Case, front-facing garages and very good elevations. And very popular homes. They've been selling extremely quickly. This is what we're trying to build. And when it really gets down to it, and this is the layout of those lots, the code is stating that if we want to build this type of home on this lot, we need to drive the driveway width down to 7.5 feet or side load the garage, right? The market studies that we have performed on side-loaded garages or rear-loaded garages, people like the concept, but they're not willing to give up the logistical elements that complicate those types of garages. Rear-loading garages, people have trouble fencing their backyard. They don't want to give their backyard up for their dog or their kids. Side-loaded garages, they're very reluctant to share a driveway with their neighbors, and my family loves to play in the driveway on their bicycles and tricycles and whatnot, and so they're very reluctant to share that space with a neighbor, much less figuring out how to repair that, shared cost of repairing the shared driveway. It's an additional complication, and so our market studies say people want these front-loaded 2-car garages when it really gets down to logistics. Now, one of the problems that gets presented is people don't like the optics of these 2-car garages because they take up too much of the frontage of the house. And I went through MLS and I was looking at Gardner, and if we used a different lot type, which we couldn't use for this small of lot, we'd be allowed, we wouldn't have this garage door standard that we're talking about. And I just wanted to point out something because I thought it was very interesting. In the suburban yard type, you don't have this deviation, and many of the homes in Gardner are, they exceed the 40% that we're requesting. And I just put up these two, this is Megan Valley, this is Moonlight Gardens. Granted, these are 3-car garages, but as you can see, that they're exceeding the 40% request that we're asking. This is Aspen Creek and Austin Reserve, same thing. Plum Creek, Symphony Farms, same things. Copper Springs, Genesis Creek. This is what the market's doing. And so the difference between this product and this product is essentially a 3rd-car garage. And what we're trying to do is provide affordable housing that's quality, that the market's demanding, and we're seeing the market demand this product. We're doing a very similar, nearly identical development that we're We just got approved in Olathe at 175th and Lac, right against Heritage Park. That's the model that we used in putting this together. Same lot width, same setbacks, etc. And so I guess in summary, as you look at this laundry list of deviation requests, 13 long, it seems like a lot. It seems like we don't want to play by the rules. But it's quite contrary. We want to put on the ground what the market wants. And we've got 5 different developments going in various parts of the city right now. We study the market extremely hard. And this is a very popular product in our city right now. And I think we want to bring it to Gardner. And I think it's important to realize that when we put this whole plan together, this was the product that we wanted to build. This was the product that we represented to the governing body when we sought incentives to get this project going. This product, plus the product that you saw in the estates, plus the multifamily, plus the retail, it's a very complicated ecosystem that requires us to buy millions of dollars of bonds to finance infrastructure at a great risk to our company. It provides a lot of upfront spending on our part to put in infrastructure for this project. And I guess I just encourage you to look at this as a holistic approach and a holistic application, even though we're breaking it down into various pieces and various deviations. And so with that, I'll just stand for any questions that you might have.
Because of all the different deviations, we'll go ahead and go commissioner by commissioner on this to see if what you have for the applicant. Commissioner Ford?
Commissioner Ford, I don't think I have any questions at this time.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Deaton?
No questions at this time, thank you.
Commissioner McNear?
I have a few. Mr. Schramm, I wanted to first congratulate you on the effort and the amount of the immense amount of work that you put into bring this development and the plan to this point. I can see a tremendous amount of work, and what I wanted to do was just make sure that I clearly understood a couple of things, and then I'm going to ask some questions for staff also. It looks like, and by disclosure, I will disclose that I'm a licensed realtor, have been for almost 20 years, live in the Gardner area, have been in this Gardner school district since we moved here from Nebraska almost 20 years ago. One of the things that looks like you're trying to address here with the 50-foot lot width is just this, and my question is this maybe to try to get a few more units and per acre and to drove the 50-foot lot limits or lot widths because of economic considerations for the expense of the development of the rest of the parcel. Is that part of what we're trying to address here?
Yeah, I mean, we're trying to create two distinct price points, the estates being a price point and the Meadows being a price point. And I think, when I was originally talking with Mayor Shute and other members of the governing body about the development agreement, one of the things we said was we want to create a different kind of feel in this area. And so we need to have buffering against our retail. That's just going to have to happen.
Sure.
I mean, that's just good planning, right? But if we went in with like an R2, did a duplexes, I feel like there's a lot of duplexes in Gardner right now, right? And so coming in, the trade-off here is like we're going to zoning R2, but we're putting in single-family developments. But it's the hope and the desire as we put those in place is the lot prices will be lower. That will be extended to the builders. The builders will extend that price down. We do a lot of work with our builders when we're identifying product for our neighborhood of saying this is the price point that we're trying to hit, and we will cull through their floor plans and work with them to identify those floor plans because we're trying to get this price point into the mid twos to mid to high twos would be
that would be that would be a very attractive price point to try to hit. That's why I was kind of looking at this. It came to mind that what you're really trying to do is find that sweet spot, if you will, of expense and price point, features and lifestyle. Is that kind of where you're headed?
Absolutely. One of the things I did want to put out, and I forgot to include in my presentation, was we're going to put an amenity in the first phase. So a pool, likely a pickleball court, you know, things that we're doing in our Olathe developments. We're going to put that in the first phase, and it will serve both developments, the Meadows and the estate. So it'll be one amenity center for both, and I think that will be really appealing at that price point.
Just a couple more items that I just wanted to ask about. It looks like the 20-foot driveway request on both the Meadows and the estate lots is more of, is that more of the market demanding that be the case, and telling you that, you know, hey, yes, we might not like so much the real hardscape looking front of these properties, but when it comes down to a lifestyle of living in these properties, we really need to have the access, the storage, and all the things that go with a larger driveway width. Is that kind of where you're going?
Absolutely. You know, what's interesting is if you follow this 50-foot lot widths, you're down at 7.5 feet on the driveway. I drive a pickup truck. My tires would be flopping over the edge of that driveway, pulling in every night. 7.5 feet is not wide enough. Now, the market wants a 2-car garage. People park a car in the driveway. They're just used to it, and so sharing driveways is a definite market obstacle. I've never seen a 7.5-foot driveway to a 2-car garage. But I can't think that the market would accept that, especially with the SUVs and the big minivans that we're driving right now. That's a narrow opening, and you got to hit it pretty square to keep your tires on that.
So what you're really saying then, these deviation requests of this type are more to be able to make this development in this neighborhood viable from a sales and marketing perspective and market acceptance by the public. Is that where you're going?
Yes.
That's all I have for now. I got some questions for staff when it comes back around.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner May.
Thank you, sir.
I don't have anything for the applicant. Thank you.
Commissioner Hanson.
I just want to say thanks to Travis for providing all that information and kind of walking all those through the deviations. After Larry went through the long list of deviations, I was a little bit puzzled, but having kind of seen the neighborhoods that you're referring to, I've got good knowledge of those places, and obviously this looks like a good plan. So thank you for your efforts.
Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Simmons-Lee.
No questions.
Travis, I was just wondering on the deviations where the city staff was looking to remove some lots. Were you in agreement with those lots being removed? Did you want that deviations for all those to be standard throughout the development?
You know, so the lots, I want to make sure I'm understanding the question. The lots that are removed from the deviation requests that don't meet the 50% requirement of all open space, and the ones that don't have enough open space behind them to achieve the desired result, is that what you're referring to?
Yes, yeah, where you're changing the minimum setbacks and so forth. They had to do with
You know,
open space.
I'll be honest with you, I went through that lot by lot. Some of those are exceptionally deep, and so that's kind of an irrelevant request. Some of those are, they're just not the most desirable lots because they're kind of internal kind of lots that are jammed in there. And so remember what my proposal is to say, look, I want the biggest house to fit on all my lots. Mm-hmm. And the truth of the matter is some of those internal lots are not going to get the biggest house because they're not the ideal lots. And so I wasn't a huge fan of it. I felt like I'll just be frank, I felt like we were really pushing the staff to get as far as we got. And so I was willing to concess those things, just because there was only about 5 that I was concerned about. And I thought, well, I'm gonna pick my battles a little bit.
All right, so you're saying you're willing to accept those lots, that you've accepted those lots that they removed?
Yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to double check that. I don't have any other questions as to the other deviations. Thank you. I'm sorry, Commissioner McNear?
Yes, Mr. Schramm, I had one other question for you, sir, and that was in regards to the 20 versus 25-foot setbacks on the rears of some of these lots, especially the ones that adjoin the green space. When you look how that looks into the wetlands, is that extra 5 feet, is that pretty much just needed to be able to shoehorn or fit the footprint of the house onto the reduced size lots?
Yeah, I mean, what we're doing there, again, we take kind of our deepest, I mean, and it's not the same house. When we're taking it and applying it to all these lots, it's not the same house. It's like, we're on a shallow lot, we're gonna take the deepest house we've got and put it on that lot and see what we need, right? We're gonna, on a narrow lot, we're gonna take our widest house and apply it to that one. We're gonna just try all the permutations possible to make sure that we've got things covered. And I think we live in a world right now where these covered porches are just, everybody's got to have one. And so I believe the city code allows for the first 4 feet of those to be discounted. I'm not sure exactly how that's being applied right now, but you know, when you're looking at that footprint and you're looking at depth, and then you take a 15-foot covered porch off the back, you're getting to these pretty deep houses, technically, even though it's just a covered porch. And it would be easy for us to drive the rear property lines out into the wetlands, but then we have to mitigate those wetlands because they're included in the boundary of the lot, even if we didn't disturb them. And that's where it's like, well, that's just kind of silly. Let's just stay out of them and let people just look at them, leave the lots short. At the end of the day, some of these lot coverage requirements, these rear setback issues, this is for, I personally believe that this development is going to take off, and like a lot of our developments, they just start running up. The houses get bigger as they continue to develop in character. The houses get bigger and bigger and bigger and more valuable, which is great for the tax base. And we want to let that happen. We don't want to have to be back in here requesting variances and deviations because the development is going really well. We want to be back in here looking at our next project.
So just to kind of sum that point up, you're looking at this as more of it could be, go as far as to say it could affect the viability economically of this subdivision by not being able to produce what the market really says they want to have. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Thank you, sir. Excellent work.
Thank you.
Okay, any further questions from the commissioners? Okay, we have no further questions. Thank you, sir. It's time for the public to speak. There is no public here. So I'll take a motion to close the public hearing.
I'd make that motion.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion to close the public hearing from Commissioner Hanson and a second from Commissioner McNear. Is there any discussion on the motion? All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Any against? Any abstentions? Public hearing is closed, 7-0. All right, Commissioner discussion. Commissioner Ford?
I think any questions that I was coming up with had been answered as we were going through the last sections.
Okay, thank you, sir. Commissioner Deaton?
No questions.
Commissioner McNear?
I had a couple for staff, if I could, please. I think a lot of this kind of comes back to maybe before any of us sitting here tonight were on the planning commission. Where did the reduced frontages, the reduced driveways stuff, and those kinds of ideas. Is that something that came about in one of the comprehensive plans? Was that a desire on the part of the staff? Where did these issues we're dealing with come from originally? I think it goes back before any of us were.
Land development code, I think it was what he's talking about, when we did our land code rewrite.
Yeah, I mean, this was 4 or 5 years ago when they started the whole review of the planning code and decided to try and find a method to create that secondary tier of housing for the market, and then what was the market like at that point in time. And one of the things that they found was that this type of item was something that would set the city apart and would probably help drive the housing at the time. So it was something that was brought in. I mean, there were developers that reviewed this and real estate people reviewed this, and it was a public, I mean, it was a massive undertaking at the time, and it took, about 14 months, I think, by the time from start to finish. So by the time it got to the city council and was adopted, it had been pretty well vetted at the time. So, but it's a living document, and it's like all living documents. As the market changes and as things change and we review these items, the opportunity to tweak them and change them is there all the time. Maybe we just do it through the code amendment process. So that's kind of where we are.
If as a commission we wanted to allow the developer to have some of these deviations and to move that, what would be the process we'd have to go through to make that happen?
Well, for tonight, you would just accept the deviations that have been requested.
Okay.
If you want to change the code, then we would go back through and look at these items on a piece-by-piece basis and go through them and see how they would best be how they could best be fitted into the code as changes, because every one of them needs to change affects something else.
Sure.
So you can't just, I don't want to use the word willy-nilly, but you can't just go in and pick and choose.
Right.
And say, I want to change this and I don't want to change that, because you will be affecting other parts of the code.
So if I understand what you're saying correct, Larry, we can approve something like this as a one-off, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And
not have to go back and change or revise the land development code?
Correct. You can approve the deviations that have been requested based upon the offsetting mitigation circumstances that he has proposed and that staff has proposed.
Okay. So we can do this as a one-off and don't have to go back and worry about the other.
Correct.
The other being the land development code.
Correct. Now, that doesn't change the code, though, for someone else that comes in with the same issues. They would be going through the same process.
So if we wanted to make that easier for other developers in the future, we would have to come back as a separate item or a separate set of issues to change that for anything in the future, or we're back to this every time.
Yeah, except I'm not sure that every development's going to have many of the issues that this particular piece of property happened to have with it. So
I would agree, because if we went back to the first one we had tonight, those had the restrictions on it, and those were developer requested. Right. And so the market, in that case, the developer is saying, this is what I believe the market wants to do in this situation. And in this situation that we're talking about at this point, Mr. Schramm is saying these are the market conditions I see for what I want to put together. Is that correct?
For his property, correct.
The way I see it is we haven't had this deviation request very much, and this property is very different from a lot of the properties, and so thus the deviation request is the way I took the presentation tonight myself.
Sorry it takes so much time. I just want to make sure I was clear.
Thank you.
Do you have anything else, Commissioner?
I'm done.
Okay. Commissioner Maiden?
No, nothing specific. I'll just comment, when we did that land development code rewrite, that was a very, very, very long process, tons of meetings, tons of input. And I would hate to willy-nilly, like you said, go through and start changing these things. I think it's good that, the developer comes forward, we have the discussion with staff, here's what we can do as far as deviations. Let's talk about it as the planning commission. So I don't want to go through that process again and change that code again.
Agree.
So,
I agree.
Oh, hon, it was long, but it was good. It was a good. It was a really good task. I think maybe the only, I don't know. It felt a little tight. And I don't remember exactly which one of the deviations it was. The garage thing really didn't bother me. I get it. That made sense. It was the one where the houses seemed really close together. Which deviation was that? I don't remember. They looked really tight.
That would probably be the lot coverage
The
deviation.
lot coverage one.
Was it a side-to-side issue that looked tight?
Yes.
Because they met the side.
Well,
side
no, it was the
setbacks.
30%. He showed the picture of Symphony Farms with 30 and 35%. He's requesting 40%, and if you look, that area out at Symphony Farms, that's already really tight and close together.
Could I give you a comment? When you're looking at a 25 or 30% reduced lot size overall, and you're still trying to plant the same size house that the market is asking for, which is what he's talking about here. If you're trying to put the same size of house on a smaller square footage lot, which is in this case the most expensive piece of the proposition, then it is going to look tighter. And and the alternative is if someone looking to purchase that lot doesn't like that, they can always opt for a smaller size house.
Sure. Oh yeah, I was just making the comment just.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah,
But
it looks
that's
tight.
everyone's preference. Just
It looks
like I
tight,
said, yeah.
and the issue is it comes down to economics with the size and square footage of the lot.
Well,
Yeah.
You're correct. You're absolutely correct.
he actually, that was on the 30% maximum, right? And
Yeah.
he actually didn't have any issues, I believe,
Right.
with that deviation because it was accepted for the ones that were up against, the waterways and stuff like that, because the close next to each other would be mitigated by the fact that they have the open space behind, and then
It'll look bigger.
We took a whole bunch out.
Okay, so yeah, that one wasn't even our discussion. My bad. I guess that was the only
Right.
one that I just kind of. Okay, we don't even have questions on that one.
Yeah, that was the one I was asking.
That was
I asked the
number
question
9.
about
Yeah,
to
thank you.
to
Okay.
Travis, so.
Yeah, no, I don't think I have anything else. Just thanks for letting me make that comment. It looks good. I think this is great, and you had good input.
Thank you.
I don't do this for a living, so.
Just as a comment, I see this. I see this development as well thought out, well planned. He was looking to do his very best that he could with the wetlands and not including the wetlands in the lots, because once you start doing that, then you open a whole can of worms.
Completely.
This developer seems to be very savvy and well thought out and well planned. I'm impressed.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Hanson.
Yeah, just one thing, it looks like an extremely high-quality proposal. I want to ask about the driveway sizes. I know there's lots of varying driveway sizes that are being proposed, but he did mention at one point that you could park a pickup and a van, and you'd be very lucky to get them both side by side. Was he saying that we've rectified that with this proposal, or there could potentially be some lots that are that tight? I want to make sure I understood that. Do you guys remember that when he made the
Well,
comment?
he
about
asked for the deviation because if you didn't have that certain deviation, then the width of the driveway would only be 7 and whatever feet. So that's for trucking, you could hardly.
All right. Okay, that's what.
Correct, Larry?
Correct.
Thank you. And I think you answered my other question. This is really an exception to the rule, the number of deviations that we're considering tonight.
I don't think I've ever had this many.
Okay.
Commissioner Simmons-Lee?
I don't have any questions.
Okay, and everybody hit everything for me. I like the case-by-case basis. I think that the developer made a very good presentation on why these deviations would be needed here, and quite frankly, I thought staff made a very good presentation on both sides of this and how some of these deviations would help. So I think everybody did a really good job on this, but I personally am for granting the developers deviations for this project. That's my comment. So, has anybody got any further comments to make?
Motion.
The motion, this is, we get the interesting part here. Now, Larry, so when we get to like number 12 and number 13.
So the ones that are on the screen now?
Yeah, the red ones. we state to accept the deviations given by the developer in there, or?
These are potential conditions for deviation, so in order to accept them, we would,
Just
I
strike
believe
them.
you would just say you accept them. Am I correct on that, Michelle? If we made the way they're written?
Or would you strike them out? Not even include them in the.
You would,
Would that be a good
if
question
you're just
for council?
accepting deviation 4, 5, 10, 11, and 12 as proposed, you would just remove those conditions. Yeah, just remove the red ones.
So it's just not state them, and that would accept the deviations
Right,
from the
because
developer.
that's, what you're seeing as conditions are things that need to be changed
Okay.
based on the plan dated, whatever the date says. So you either remove it if you're accepting what the applicant has proposed, or you change it to be
Something else.
something
Something
else.
else.
Okay.
So you would remove those.
Or you just say that they shall comply to the code regarding access width for the estates area.
Okay.
So you have 3 options.
I think that helps whoever makes this motion in life, so.
And will help.
Who would like to make the motion?
Can I ask one question?
Sure.
Sorry. So you're taking out 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16. Which numbers are being taken out?
The ones in red.
The ones
Okay.
in red.
Depending on who makes the motion, if they want it. Commissioner Ford.
Michelle, if you can go back a page or 6.
Go for it.
It's in your staff report.
Next page.
That's it.
There's the
Oh,
start of
this
it.
It's 3 pages.
3.
Commissioner Ford here. After review of application Z-20-01, a rezoning for 136 acres from County RUR, PRB2, and PEC3 to RP1 and RP2, located approximately a quarter mile south of the intersection of 175th Street and Clare Road. Portions of parcel ID CF231429-3002 and CF231429-1001, and preliminary development plan PDP-20-01 for Prairie Trace and dated March 2nd, 2020, and staff report dated March 24th, 2020. The Planning Commission recommends the governing body approve the application subject to the following conditions. 1, label the following tracts and add the size in the summary tables. Subset 1, trail tract between estates lot 177 and lot 178. Subset 2, trail tract between estates lot 79 and lot 80. 2, revise the single-family site data number of lots to 194 for the estates and 162 for the Meadows. Number 3, Meadows lots 149 and 154 through 158 shall be revised to meet the minimum lot width at the setback line. Number 4, change notes indicated a 10-foot asphalt trail along New Trails Parkway to be a 10-foot concrete trail. Number 5, provide a written agreement that Southern Star has reviewed the plans and agrees to the proposed street crossings and 10-foot concrete trail and associated easements to be located within their 66-foot gas pipeline easement. Number 6, provide a written agreement that KCP&L/Evergy has reviewed the plans and agrees to the proposed street crossings, easements, utility lines, and 10-foot concrete trail to be located within their 70-foot electric line easement. Number 7, trail and pedestrian amenities shall be installed with the development of the phase in which it is platted. Number 8, update the deviation outline on the plans to note that estate lots 28, 39, 40, 57 to 67, 82, 86, 87, 96 to 108, 117 to 119, 123 to 128, 131 to 133, 146 to 141 to 146, 152, 153, 162, 164 to 170, 186 to 194 shall meet the 25-foot rear yard setback minimum. Number 9, update the deviation outline on the plans to note that estate lots 28, 39, 40, 57 to 67, 82, 86, 87, 96 to 108, 117 to 119, 123 to 128, 131 to 133, 141 to 146, 152, 153, 162, 164 to 170, 186 to 194 shall meet the 30% building coverage maximum. Number 10, update the deviation outline on the plans to note that Meadows lots 19 to 36, 42, 43, 58, 59, 68 to 79, 89, 84 to 90, 99, 100, 120 to 125, 135 to 154 shall meet the 25-foot minimum yard setback. Number 11, update the deviation outline on the plans to note that Meadows lots 19 to 36, 42, 43, 58, 59, 68 to 79, 84 to 90, 99, 100, 120 to 125, 135 to 154 shall meet the 40% building coverage maximum.
Second. Oh, sorry.
Wait a minute.
We have to go back, I'm sorry.
Continuing to number 17,
That'd be,
number 12, if we want to renumber.
yeah, right.
Okay. Revise the deviation requests on the first 3 pages of the plan to reflect what has been approved. Number 18, or 13, provide a 10-foot easement along the south side of the Meadows Lot 79 east side of Estates Tract H and along the west side of Estates Tract G. 14, revise the right-of-way for 177th Street to be at least 80 feet in width.
15.
Number 15, provide a truck turning template for the Johnson County Fire District Number 1's largest truck on it to show that the islands will not impede fire truck movement. Number 16, the applications shall be reviewed and approved by the Johnson County Airport Board and Johnson County Board of County Commissioners prior to the publication of an ordinance by the City of Gardner governing body.
Yes, Michelle?
Second.
Hold on.
I want to clarify to make sure that your intent is this. So deviation number 4 is for the access width. The applicant has asked for 30% or 20-foot max. That frontage type does not allow for the flare. So what, as it's stated, it would be 20-foot max from the street to the driveway, or to the front of the house. That is not what is shown on the diagrams. That would not allow for a third stall flare. So if you want to allow for that third car stall flare, that would need to be changed on both of them. On the diagrams, it shows for the estates 20 feet at the right-of-way with the potential to flare out for that third car. So I guess we could ask the applicant which he is intending to clarify it, because as the deviation states and as the request states, you would get 20 feet wide from the street right-of-way to the front of the house.
All the way up.
That's not what's diagrammed as an option.
So no flare.
Michelle?
No flare. And I'm guessing he's intending for the potential for the flare. Go
Travis?
ahead, Travis.
Sorry, I didn't mean to jump out of turn there. We certainly need the flare in the estates because we're having a 3-car garage there.
Okay,
Is that what you're talking about, the estates, or are you talking about the Meadows as well?
It would be-
we're only doing 2-car garages there.
Right, it would be both of them because for the Meadows, it was, well, hold on.
My understanding was it was 20 feet at the right-of-way, and so, you know, obviously we've got lot coverage issues where we can't just pave the front yard, but my understanding of the code was that it had to be at 20 feet at the right-of-way is the way we were applying for it, and then obviously we could flare it up to match the garage. That's not gonna be much of a flare from a 20-foot width to a 2-car garage, but on a 3-car it would be.
And that standard is for the suburban yard frontage type. That specifically says 20-foot or 24 feet at the right-of-way. So it allows for that flare. This frontage type does not. In the deviation request for the Meadows, it states 40% or 20-foot max. And in the diagrams, it shows 16 feet at the right-of-way flaring out to 20 feet. So
Could we do something like this, 20 feet at the right-of-way, not to exceed the width of the garage? I mean, that would accomplish what we're trying to accomplish.
yeah, I think you would be okay for the Meadows if you just revise your drawing to meet what the deviation request is. For the estates, we could revise the request to be 30%, 20-foot max at the right-of-way line.
Okay.
So that gives you what you had intended, the 20 feet at the right-of-way line with the opportunity to flare.
Okay, great.
So how do we amend this?
Which
So-
section of the suggested motion do we?
Yeah, that's what I was trying to figure out.
This is,
It'd actually be an additional, it'd be a,
it
be
would
a
be one of
17,
the ones
right?
that you deleted.
right, so it'd be added on to the motions.
Number 12.
Yeah, give me a second.
So we'd want to make 17.
Yeah, just add it back in.
To accept.
The 17.
You could say revised deviation number 4, section 17.07.050C, frontage design standards, neighborhood yard access width for the estates to be 30% and 20-foot max at the right-of-way line.
Got it?
Are you able to, so you'll just go ahead and amend and you'll add is it 17?
17,
Yeah, so amend it and add 17.
I'd like to amend my previous motion to add number 17 of accepting deviation number 4, section 17.07.050C, frontage design and design standards, neighborhood yard access width for the estates area to be 20 feet at the right-of-way,
30% coverage.
30% coverage.
30% width.
30
I'm sorry.
So 30% width.
30 foot.
No, it's a
30%.
30%.
We're widening to the garage width.
That's the correct garage,
with
30
a
feet.
20-foot maximum width at the right-of-way line. So it's a 30% width maximum and a 20-foot width maximum. So it's a
30% width maximum and a 20-foot maximum at the right-of-way.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Ford, for
Thank you.
making this motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, I have a motion, Commissioner Ford, and a second by Commissioner McNear. Do we have any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor state aye.
Aye.
Any against, any abstentions, motion passes 7-0. Now we're on to PP-20-01.
This is item 2D, PP 20-01, preliminary plat for the Prairie Trace Single Family. You're becoming very familiar with the preliminary plat area by this time. In acceptance with accordance with the comprehensive plan, in particular the physical patterns, arrangements of streets, blocks, open spaces, and public realm investments. This reflects the principles and concepts of the plan. Even though the application is not consistent with the future land use map because of the action you've taken, the new zoning would create a preliminary plat that would meet the comprehensive plan. So the staff findings are as the plat supports various goals and policies of the comprehensive plan. The plat meets an exception for the block size and connectivity standards for natural features. The plat will meet the remainder of the LDC standards through the preliminary development plan process, especially since you have now checking the deviations in. And the proposed phasing demonstrates logical and coordinated development. And the project extends public utilities to the site and across the interstate to support this and future development. So the staff recommendation is for approval of the preliminary plat PP 20-01 for Prairie Trace with the conditions outlined in the suggested motion section. And I think there are 2 pages.
Okay, is there any discussion by any questions by any of the commissioners? Okay, with no questions, I would accept a motion on PP-20-01.
I'd make that motion.
Okay.
After review of application PP 20-01, a preliminary plat for 136 acres, including 356 single-family lots located approximately a quarter-mile south of the intersection of 175th Street and Clare Road, portions of parcel IDs CF 231429-3002 and CF 231429-1001.
Correction. 149.
And CF 231429-1001, and preliminary development plan / preliminary plat dated March 10, 2020, and staff report dated March 24, 2020. The Planning Commission approves the application provided the following conditions are met. Number 1, approval of rezoning Z-20-01 and preliminary development plan PDP-20-01 for Prairie Trace. Number 2, the preliminary plat shall be revised to be consistent with the approved preliminary development plan. Number 3, provide a 10-foot easement along the south side of Meadows Lot 79, east side of Estates Tract H, and along the west side of Estates Tract G. Number 4, revise the right-of-way for 177th Street to be at least 80 feet in width. Number 5, provide a truck turning template with the Johnson County Fire District Number 1's largest truck on it to show that the islands will not impede fire truck movement. Number 6, the applications shall be reviewed and approved by the Johnson County Airport Board and Johnson County Board of County Commissioners prior to the publication of an ordinance by the City of Gardner governing body.
Second.
All right, I have a motion by Commissioner Hanson with a second by Commissioner Ford. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Without any further discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any against, any abstentions? Motion passes 7-0. And that's the end of our agenda, so I would accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by McNear and a second by Commissioner Ford to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any against? Meeting is adjourned.